Evil, a word that feels distant, like something that belongs to dictators, serial killers, or movie villains. But what if evil isn't something separate from us? What if, under the right circumstances, ordinary people, people like you and me, are capable of unthinkable acts? Psychology suggests that evil isn't just about bad people doing bad things. Sometimes it's about good people put in the wrong situations. One of the most disturbing experiments in history, the Stanford Prison Experiment, proved this. In 1971, psychologist Philip Zimbardo divided participants into guards and prisoners in a simulated prison. Within days, the guards, ordinary college students, began humiliating, abusing, and psychologically torturing the prisoners. The experiment, meant to last 2 weeks, had to be stopped after just 6 days. Another famous study, the Milgram experiment, revealed how far people would go simply because an authority figure told them to. Participants were instructed to administer what they believed were painful electric shocks to a stranger. The shocks weren't real, but the participants didn't know that. Shockingly, 65% of them continued all the way to the highest voltage even when the victim screamed in pain. These experiments expose something chilling. Evil isn't always intentional. Sometimes it's obedience. Sometimes it's just following orders. Hannah Arendt called this the banality of evil, the idea that history's worst atrocities weren't necessarily committed by monsters, but by ordinary people doing what they were told. But if evil is so easily triggered, does that mean it exists in all of us? Swiss psychologist Carl Jung believed so. He called it the shadow, the hidden part of our psyche where our darkest impulses live. Most of us suppress it, but when we're given power, anonymity, or justification, it can emerge. This explains why war changes people. History is full of stories of soldiers who started as ordinary men, but over time committed acts of cruelty. It's not that they were born evil. It's that their environment allowed their shadow to take over, and sometimes evil doesn't come from cruelty. It comes from indifference. The 1964 murder of Kitty Genovese became infamous because dozens of neighbors reportedly heard her screams, but no one helped. Everyone assumed someone else would act. This is called the bystander effect, the psychological tendency to do nothing when responsibility feels shared. But just as psychology reveals how easily evil can emerge, it also shows how goodness can prevail. Take Oskar Schindler, a businessman who started the war profiting from forced labor but later risked everything to save over 1,000 Jewish lives. Or the village of Le Chambon-sur-Lignon in France, where thousands of Jews were hidden from the Nazis. When asked why, the villagers simply said, "It was the right thing to do." So what determines whether someone follows orders blindly or stands up against evil? Psychologist Philip Zimbardo suggests that the key is self-awareness. Understanding how power, obedience, and social influence shape behavior makes us less likely to fall into their trap. Resistance often comes from those who question authority. The White Rose movement in Nazi Germany, led by students distributing anti-Nazi pamphlets, is a perfect example. They were executed for their defiance, but their actions proved that even in the darkest times, people can choose to resist. One of the strongest psychological weapons against evil is empathy. Studies show that when people take the time to imagine themselves in another's position, cruelty decreases. A real-world example of this happened in 1914 during World War I. Soldiers from opposing sides declared a spontaneous Christmas truce, emerging from their trenches to share food and play games. In that moment, they saw each other not as enemies, but as human beings. So if evil is a choice, so is goodness. And in the small moments of everyday life, we each decide which path we take.